Today on the Matt Walsh Show, we're going to have an uncomfortable conversation about race, another one. Though it shouldn't be uncomfortable at all, really, because all I'm going to do is give you the facts about interracial violence and homicide. The media is telling you lies, so today we'll look at the truth. Also, 5 headlines, including Utah's move to protect children from pornography. The mayor of Charlottesville goes entirely insane. And a soccer player is the latest spoiled rich woman to publicly announce that she's oppressed. In our daily cancellation, we'll deal with a few recent examples of alleged anti-Asian racism. But are they really examples of racism at all? My answer will, well, not shock you at all. But we'll talk about that and much more today on The Matt Walsh Show. The events of the last few weeks seem to have sparked a renewed conversation about the threat posed by, in the words of a recent USA Today headline, white violence. These concerns, which are being expressed in spite of the fact that the Atlanta shooter was not motivated by race and the Boulder shooter wasn't even white, though all of his victims were, all stem from an alleged pandemic of white brutality, in the words of another headline. A quick trip through Google will pull up countless articles and editorials with phrases like white rage and weaponized whiteness and the threat of whiteness. As Kamala Harris's niece, Mina Harris, put it in a now deleted tweet, violent white men are the greatest terror threat to our country. The website MLive in Michigan has a story this week about black people in Michigan who are afraid to walk through the suburbs for fear of violence from whites. In Michigan, it's reported that increasing numbers of black people are purchasing guns in order to defend themselves against dastardly white men. Now, the message from all this is clear. White people are dangerous, and uniquely so. We're meant to believe, or at least to shut up and pretend we believe, that white violence is a serious problem in this country and that much of that violence is interracial. Now, as the media tries its hardest to stir up panic over the hordes of murderous, bloodthirsty white men supposedly roaming our streets, it becomes necessary to introduce some truth and sanity into the picture. Fortunately, the FBI, for the time being, at least until the woke mob demands that they take it down, has homicide statistics organized into handy charts and available on their website. You can go look at it yourself. A look at those charts shows, first, that the vast majority of murder is intra-racial. That is, in the lion's share of cases, one member of a race is killing another member of the same race. So in 2019, there were 3,299 white victims of murder, of which 2,594 were killed by other white people. There were 2,906 black victims of murder, of which 2,574 were killed by other black people. Given the sort of wanton slaughter between races and ethnicities that you find in other parts of the world and throughout other periods in history, it's quite remarkable, actually, how little interracial violence we actually have in this country, though the race baiters on the left are doing what they can to change that. As for interracial murder, that is murder between different races, the statistics just as clearly show that whites fall victim to that far more often than any other race. In 2019, 566 whites were killed by blacks as opposed to 246 blacks killed by whites. The numbers are very similar throughout all other years in recent history. Again, you can go look at this yourself. Outlets like Reuters have run fact checks on memes and social media posts that make exactly the claim that I just made, which is based entirely on publicly available FBI data. And Reuters determined that the claims are somehow still false, or at least misleading. Maybe they'll say that about what I'm doing right now is going to get a fact check, and they're going to say it's wrong. Now, how do they do that? Well, they explain that though it's true that more white people fall victim to interracial murder, it's also true that given the population disparities, black people are more likely to fall victim to interracial murder. Now, that's technically correct, though it's nonsensical to accuse someone of stating a falsehood just because they didn't frame the statistical data in the way that you subjectively prefer. You take any data point, there are different ways of framing it, all of which could be true. What the fact checkers on the internet will do is they have one particular framing that they want to see. And if you don't frame it that way, they're going to fact check you and say that what you're saying is false, even if it's true. The problem, though, is that the more likely knife cuts both ways. See, if we say that blacks are more likely to fall victims than whites, we must also say that blacks, again, given the difference in population size, are significantly more likely to victimize whites. Any given black person is more likely to die by violence, even violence from a white person, but he's also more likely to be the one committing violence. That's what the statistics indisputably show. Those are just the facts. That's it. There's no way to frame the numbers that will get around the simple facts of the matter. The problem of interracial violence in America, though comparatively small, and we should be grateful for that, is a problem being driven much more by non-white people than by white people. Non-white people are committing the majority of interracial violence and also intraracial violence. And it's not even that close. If black people in Michigan or anywhere else are running to arm themselves for fear of homicidal whites, that fear is purely the product of media fabrication. It has no foundation in reality. None. What's the point of presenting this information? Why bother citing FBI homicide statistics? Well, because first of all, the truth matters, I think. I think it matters for its own sake. When someone like Jessica Valenti claims, as she did in a post on Medium, that, quote, young white male rage is the biggest threat to our country, she has no facts supporting her whatsoever. She has only her feelings, her perceptions, what she wishes were true, what she thinks ought to be true. Truth again matters for its own sake and must be asserted and asserted again and reasserted in the face of lies and false narratives. And we must keep asserting it every single time. Also, and this is really important, we have to consider why these lies are being told. It should make us suspicious and quite worried whenever we notice that any racial or ethnic group is being assigned the role of bad guys. It's what's happening right now to white people, white males in particular. Humanity has a long history of doing this sort of thing, of positioning a certain category of humans as the societal scapegoats. And we've seen the terrifying results of that time and time and time again. And when it becomes taboo to defend that group from the false narratives used to slander it, when the average person slightly recoils and kind of grimaces at the presentation of factual information, as some of you may have done when I was just telling you the FBI homicide statistics. Some of you, when you were listening, might have been like, I don't know if you should be saying this. Well, when even average people have that reaction to the truth, that's when you know that we've truly entered the danger zone. Our cultural overlords have their reasons for lying about the great white menace. The reasons cannot be good, and they cannot lead to anything but horror and suffering and hate. That, after all, for them, is the whole point. Now let's get to our 5 headlines.